Hello again, it's Cliff here from Down Under. Another episode in the sliding swing door access enclosure build. It's all together now, and so this video is going to be about assembly and the grand opening. Cheers. Just assembling the sliding doors now and hanging them, and it occurs to me as I'm doing this that the construction looks fairly complicated, and it might be a bit daunting to one or two of you trying to decide whether you want to get involved in building something like this. It isn't as bad as it looks. I know I'd probably find a video like this quite daunting looking at it all in operation. So I'll take you through an assembly of the door one step at a time, so you can see that it's not too bad at all. Over the weekend I dismantled the lift enclosure so I could salvage the materials. That was a design that really didn't go anywhere in the end, but you know, you learn from your mistakes, and I probably lost 2 or 3 weeks building that, but never mind. That's design work, isn't it? Sometimes you go on a dead-end road and you have to stop and change direction and start again. I can use the acrylic sheet, 4mm, 5mm acrylic sheet, 3/16 of an inch, I think it is, approximately thick for some of the panels, and I bought 2 new panels for the very thick part of the sliding door, which is 1/4 inch acrylic sheet. Just to give you an idea of cost, I've just received this from Tormach this morning, and if I convert from the New Zealand dollars into US dollars, is probably the most useful for you, and I know your prices are lower over there because you've got a much bigger market. You could expect to pay $50 to $100 for those 2 1/4 inch sheets, and a little bit less for the 2 3/16 sheets in acrylic if you choose to use this design and those materials. Some of you are probably wondering, why have you chose acrylic and not polycarbonate? I mean, polycarbonate is indestructible. Well, it's true that polycarb is stronger than acrylic in certain tensile and impact applications, but acrylic is a very strong product. It's also quite a lot cheaper than polycarbonate, and it has some properties that are superior to polycarbonate. It's more resistant to oils and certain solvents, and probably more resistant to cutting oil, and probably in this application you could argue that it is superior both on the basis of performance and price. But please do your own research before you make this decision, because I'd hate to be responsible for somebody choosing the wrong material. That's just what I've concluded. You could argue either way, and I may be wrong. But anyway, so far acrylic has worked out well for me. The handles are quite simple and low cost. It's quite an elegant design. I think it's stainless steel that I'm using. In the US they'd probably only be $2 or $3, maybe $4 each. Okay, door assembly stage 1. So you've already hung the door when it was in its black welded state, and you know that's all good, and you've got your hinges on. Then you drill the holes in it, and then you painted it. So now you're ready to start to assemble it. So the first thing I did was drilled and tapped the holes for the flashing, and that's back from the edge slightly more than that 1-inch angle iron, so it clears it when it swings shut. And then those little drilled holes there, take little cheesehead screws. I just have to cut those a little bit shorter so it doesn't penetrate down into the slide mechanism. Once you've done that, you're ready to mount your clear plastic sheet. So bandsaw a piece of sheet. If you don't have a bandsaw, you could use a jigsaw or a circular saw, and spot through with a felt pen, mark where the holes are going to go, drill those holes, a little bit of clearance. You know, I used 4mm countersunk screws with nuts, so I drilled about 5mm holes. it's a good idea to keep a few sticks of polyurethane in stock. It's quite expensive, but it's a grade of synthetic rubber that you can just machine and make very useful bumper stops and soft washers and so on. For example, I've made a bumper stop here for the door and some soft washers here for the handle to reduce the chance of stress fracturing. Okay, so when you tighten those screws, I'm sure most of you know, don't over tighten screws where there's plastic involved. You could easily stress crack it. So then the next stage is to mount the handles and mount the main slide. I just used two 4mm countersunk screws by 8mm long, quite short so it doesn't penetrate through. One there and one there, and they can be done up quite tight because it's steel on steel, and so that clears and goes all the way back. There's a nice little rubber sort of click stop that would hold the door open if that was a feature that you desired. One of the nuts used to hold the plastic panel on is I've replaced with a thicker acetal round nut that acts as a wear button, so the sliding door is guided by that rather than scratching on the head of the screws. It's 6mm thick acetal. And then finally mount the 6mm or 1/4" door. So cut it to size with maybe 4mm clearance at the bottom and say 1 or 2mm clearance at the top, and fit the handle, and then install the door loosely in place, set it up square and in position where you think it'll be about right. You know, 1 or 2mm clearance at the top and 3 or 4 or 5mm clearance at the bottom, and then just carefully mark with a felt pen here where there's round holes, complete holes rather than slots, because they will act as dowels. The screw, even if it comes a little loose, will not be able to displace very far in a round hole. So felt pen mark those through the thickness of the acrylic or polycarbonate, looking down on it, and then you can drill those holes, a reasonably close fit on the screws. And finally, when you've drilled those closer fitting holes in the plastic sheet, screw them in with nuts underneath and big washers to spread the load, because you need those to be reasonably tight. And again here, that's the sort of proportions. Not too long a screw or it'll go through into the mechanism. And then to get the nut in there, you can just tape the nut on the back of a spanner. I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but you get the idea. You slide that in there until it's in line underneath, and then screw it up tight. And the final couple of jobs are the little backstop seats for the swinging doors. They're just little acetal sections instant glued onto that bottom rail. They provide the backstop and the seat for the swinging door. It's slightly biased, so it springs when it rides up onto that seat, and that holds the whole assembly fairly rigid. There's the dimensions. If you're making something similar, just pause your screen and take a screenshot, save you having to work it out for yourself. The other thing I did was to flush mount the monitor, because it had a kind of a protruded arm on here, which now means I can get the monitor right in close to the sliding doors. And there we are, all together. Grand opening day. Okay, so swinging slide doors, high access, full access, and and when the doors are closed, there's no top rail, so you have really good access here. So what are we going to call it? The swinging slide access enclosure? Access enclosure? I don't know, but anyway, I'm really pleased with it. So that took me about 34 hours altogether. I kept a diary on the hours. So let's say 4 days net work. That includes taking the videos, but not editing them. So that's not too bad. Probably 3.5 days, maybe 4 days net work. And now I've got a system I'm really pleased with. Alright, let's take a look at the different ways this can be set up. So while you're setting up the job, you can have the monitor here, which is really convenient, like that or like that. Then you can swing it forward, close the door, have the monitor there, like that, or like that. That's pretty convenient too. Or you can swing around the side, right out of the way like that, and you can have access that way. So there's several different configurations that you can opt for with this sliding swing door access system. I should say before I get too far into the series that these designs of stands and enclosures are freely available for your own use, for your own personal use. But if you're a manufacturer and you're wanting to mass produce stands or enclosures to these designs, then they're not available for that application. They are copyright design, and please contact me if you want to do that, and we can arrange some very modest royalty or something. So contact me at cliffhalldesign@gmail.com. But if it's for your own use as a one-off situation, feel free to go ahead and use them. Cheers.